How's it going, guys? So, I don't know if you guys are familiar with a show that was around in the 70s. I think it was the early 70s, let's say even late 60s. It was both a show and they also came out with movies. And it was produced by a bunch of guys in England. It was called Monty Python. And Monty Python had a very, very famous skit called the Dead Parrot skit. What was the Dead Parrot skit? The Dead Parrot skit was where the actor John Cleese is playing a character. As you guys know, John Cleese. For those of you guys don't know, look him up. And he walks into a pet shop. And he basically has a dead parrot in his hands that he bought from the pet shop. And he comes to the owner of the pet shop and he says, "Hey, I bought this parrot last week and it's dead. I want my money back." And the owner of the pet shop swears, up and down, that the parrot is not dead, that the parrot is, because of the fact that the parrot is a Norwegian blue parrot, it's blue, and it's from Norway, that the parrot is pining for the fjords. So he takes the parrot and he goes, the guy who bought the parrot, he goes, no, it's dead. And he takes the parrot and he just goes, smashes him a few times. See, there's no reaction. The parrot, you can clearly see in front of your face. I'm showing you how the parrot is dead. He is, and then he goes into these different terminologies for what could be an equivalent to dead. What could be a synonym for dead? He is an ex-parrot. He is no more. He's this. He's that. Just like every possible term you can think of for something. Oh, he has ceased to be. For that, it just goes on and on and on and on. And the owner swears up and down that the parrot is sleeping. It's alive. He's sleeping. He is in shock, and he's pining for the fjords, and this goes on and on. In the end, the guy who bought the parrot, finally, I think he convinces the guy that basically the parrot's dead, and he says, "I want my money back." And then the guy goes to him, "Well, I can't give you your money back. You bought this at the Leeds, I'm just like, whatever, making stuff up. You bought this at the Leeds location in Leeds, England, and we're in the, we're like in London or in Manchester, wherever we are. So you can't return it here, you have to go to Leeds." And this guy's like, "You just spent, 5 or 10 minutes trying to convince me this parrot's still alive, that he's pining for fjords, and I've finally shown you that he's dead, and now you tell me I can't return him here because you guys are chained, but I have to go." It's this whole thing. Guys, why am I telling you? Why am I talking to you guys about Monty Python and dead parrots? Guys, if you look back last 5 or 6 years, you'll notice a pattern. You notice a pattern that, it's a pattern of behavior, and it's a pattern of kind of consciousness, let's put it this way, that my parents can actually tell you about, because these are people who were born in and grew up in the Soviet Union. They spent the first 33 years of their lives in the Soviet Union, to where something is reported on, whether it's a blogger, whether it's some obscure what's thought of as an obscure source on the internet, or what's thought of as a non-reputable or not thought of as reputable source on the internet. And then, somebody picks up on it, and then a few people start posting about it on social media. And at best, this story or this thing, whatever it is dismissed as a conspiracy theory. It's laughed at. It's scoffed at. At worst, it is basically banned from social media. It is labeled as misinformation. It's labeled as conspiracy. The works. Whoever posted it gets a social media account removed, or I don't know, demonetized, or you get temporarily banned, whatever it is. And guys, if you look at the last maybe 5 or 6 years, we had situations where there was a guy who was accused, or some blogger wrote in 2015, there was a guy who had an island where he brought people or young women to do all kinds of stuff, and celebrities and all, and it was dismissed as conspiracy theory. Lo and behold, 2 years later, what did we find out? It was all true. Then we had a situation with, politicians. What do we find out? It's true. Then we had a situation with, more recently we had things with, and we still have them. We're still talking about them with certain elections. We have stuff with something that happened in a certain, on a certain day, in a certain city, in a certain building, to where now we're finding out, the whole thing may or may not have been, I don't know, staged. Now we just found out what happened in the state of Michigan with the governor, where it may or may not have been staged, allegedly, supposedly. Now we're finding out about, the same people that said last year, who were banned for saying that there was something that leaked out of a particular lab. Now we're finding out that it's basically true. Now we're finding out who funded it. My friends, this is basically what I like to call dead parrots. You come up to people, you show them something, like as it happened in real time, you show them basically like clear evidence to their face. Look, even if it's like what you would call circumstantial, even if you're connecting the dots, even if you're using logic and you're saying, well, if it's not this, then it must be that, or if it's this factor, this aspect, you put all those things together, 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 5. And these people are telling you no. 5 ones does not equal 5. 5 ones equals, I don't know, square root of pi. Or get the hell out of my face with that stuff. And then 6 months later, a year later, we find that's the truth. My friends, this is what I like to call dead parrots. We are living currently in the era of dead parrots. So now you may be asking yourself, why don't people have the capacity to see, or to understand that what you're showing them is actually plausible? Well, I'll tell you guys, I think that let's say if we assume that, just one second, guys, let me kind of get rid of this. Anyway, whatever. Let's say we assume that the guy in the pet store, in the skit that I was talking about, the guy who works in the pet store, actually believed that this parrot is a Norwegian parrot, Norwegian blue, and that the parrot is actually pining for the fjords. Imagine what his shock would be to find out and to admit to himself that the parrot is in fact dead. Imagine he wasn't trying to pull one over, this guy's, pull the wool over this guy's eyes. Imagine he actually believed this, that these parrots is what these parrots do. They get into shock when taken out of their habitat, and they freeze up. They behave as if they are dead. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what I'm seeing from a lot of people. You show them something and they say, well, I can explain that. There's always an explanation. It's interesting. What I notice is when they're explaining it, what I realize is they're not actually explaining it to me. They're not explaining it away. They're not answering me. They're trying to explain it to themselves. Because in their head they're thinking, it can't possibly be that. That would be crazy. You actually think these people want to do this, this, and this? Do you actually think these people have such and such motives? You actually think this person, such and such person, is sinister or evil or out for, I don't know, nefarious purposes? These people like to believe that everybody is inherently good. These people like to believe that we're living in an era of, free society and freedom of speech, and everybody's trying to help everybody else. That companies and corporations are trying to help everybody else. They don't want to make a buck and report, I think tomorrow or in 2 days, $26 billion in revenue. They like to think that everybody wants everybody else to be healthy and just to save the world. My friends, these people don't realize that, first of all, this whole thing of like altruism and people trying to save the world and trying to save others, or even like freedom and freedom of speech and all this kind of egalitarian stuff, it's only about, the zeitgeist is only about maybe 40 or 50 years young in the history of, I don't know, mankind. Up until that point, humanity basically was always, you had a bunch of people at the top constantly trying to, they're basically most of them are charlatans, trying to pull the wool over everybody else's eyes, trying to keep everybody down in some way, shape, or form. And I guess these people got it into their heads, the people that I'm talking about, the people who believe that everybody's good, that we have these free societies now, we have these international bodies, and they got it into their heads that now we live in an age of what we call Hesed and altruism and generosity, and no one else is out to hurt anybody else. What they don't realize is that, first of all, let's say if what they're thinking is even half true, which it's not, it took us centuries, if not millennia, and wars upon wars upon wars and blood spilled all over the damn place for our collective consciousness to evolve to that point as human beings. And frankly, guys, even if you say that, we're not even there. We're not even there. Because you know what, guys? We still have people out with nefarious, out there with nefarious purposes. Even people who you like to think are, captains of industry and billionaires and, movers and shakers and influencers and whomever, right? I'm gonna go very kind of light here. I'm going to give these people the benefit of the doubt by even calling them that. Okay? So, let's just say there's a lot of people who like them to sit around and tell themselves sweet little lies, as that song goes. Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. You know that song? What was it? Stevie Nicks, I think, right? So they're sitting around telling themselves lies. And then, at some point, the emes, the truth is revealed, slowly, and that's how you have to do it. I've realized that this is how it has to be done. It has to be done. You cannot bombard people. As Yuri Bezmenov said, he said, "How do you demoralize a nation?" He said that one of the things that happens is when you demoralize people to the point you can flood them. You can flood, and this is what I've done with friends and family. I've flooded people with information, like legit information from reputable sources. You're talking about Nature magazine, Science Daily, I don't know, reputable things, New York Magazine, Vanity Fair. Like, you flood them with stuff, and they just can't. Well, they can't even absorb it because it's so much stuff, and they just can't. They cannot put pieces together. They cannot connect the dots. Somebody asked me, what does this person have to do with that? What does that science have to do with them? What is that funding? What do you mean? They're saying it's funding. What does that have to do with them? These guys were here in America. Those guys were in China. And then you show there's a connection. You show those Chinese, they were working with these Americans over here. And I bet that they took some technology from these, like, hello, and the person just can't. I don't know. You don't know if they absorbed it. You don't know if they understand. I was talking to a friend of mine a few months ago, and he told me, Tzvi, he's like, I hope you realize that people, for the past 20 years in schools, they're not taught simple reading comprehension. They're not taught how to do what's called reading between the lines when they're reading something. You know, like when you read an article. They're not taught how to read between the lines. They're not taught how to read inferences. You know, they're not taught these things. People just don't understand how to read things. How to understand that somebody's biased, whether it's a left wing or the right wing thing, right? So, my friends, I realize that these things have to be done slowly. And then it's funny because when this stuff comes out and they're like, oh my God, you know, people are just kind of like, well, it's still like this and it's still like that and it's not quite as you said. And I wasn't saying it that way when you were saying it, you know, 6 months ago. That's not what I was saying. But yeah, now that these guys say it, now come to think of it, yeah, it makes sense now that the way they say it, but the way you said it doesn't make sense. Even though you said the same thing that these guys just said 6 months later. The media. My friend says it's selective stupidity. It's not stupidity. It's not stupidity. I'll tell you, most of the people I've spoken to are very intelligent people. It's a certain, it's what I call the third eye. It's a certain sense. You know, my cousin asked me, she's like, Tzvi, how come we see it and other people don't? Because it just takes a third eye to see these things. It takes a third eye. It's not Nintendo, it's not books, it's here, you know? And it's just, you know how people talk about, you know, the red pill kind of thing, the blue pill, the red pill, all that kind of stuff. You just have to open it. You just have to have it open, but that doesn't happen unless you want it to happen. You know, people ask me all the time, Tzvi, how'd you know? I have friends, like, they come up to me like months later, how'd you know? And I said, first of all, I'm not a clairvoyant, I'm not a mikubal, a Kabbalist, I'm not a, we call in Russian, extra sense. Just do some research. Go outside of the media. Go outside of what the media tells you. My friends, my parents lived in the Soviet Union for the first 33 years of their lives. If they would say something, you know, they would be called conspiracy theorists. And we found out a couple of years later, or 3 years later, that what they said is true. When they left the Soviet Union, or when everything collapsed, you realized that the emperor has no clothes and everything was basically true. All you have to do is circumvent the media. All you have to do is look what's happening on the ground. All you have to do is talk to people who maybe are, I don't know, work in the industry, or industry insiders, or people behind the scenes, or some people who are afraid to say stuff but will say it to a couple of people because they were threatened with physical violence. That's all you have to do, my friends. Instead of reading headlines, instead of believing everything you flip and hear. Because yes, even in a place, in a free societies, people can lie to your face because they have, I don't know, financial interests, their own personal agendas. My friends, we just saw a senator and a certain, official, I guess you can call him a bureaucrat, some people call him a scientist. They went toe to toe. The senator is telling him, this is a dead parrot. And this guy goes, you're lying. He says, you're lying about the dead, the senator tells the guy, you're lying and you're telling me that this parrot is a Norwegian blue and that he's shocked and he's pining for the fjords. And this guy goes, no, you're lying. You're saying that this parrot is dead. Clearly, we all see the parrot's dead. We've done enough research to understand that. We can look in every official source, not conspiracy website or blog, official sources. We can put 1 and 1, 2 and 2 together and get 4. This guy's telling us the parrot's pining for the fjords. My friends, dead parrots. It's dead parrots. We're seeing it over and over again, my friends. And I'll tell you right now, and I told you before, our friend Dov Bar-Leib, who made an amazing blog post, he spoke about it, and I was saying this a month ago. Now we're seeing it even more, and we're seeing it in more kind of frequency and abundance, that we're going to see more and more the closer we get to this upcoming Shemitah year. I guess Rosh Hashanah, which is September 7th this calendar year. We're going to see more and more emes come out, more and more things come out. And my friends, I suspect in about a month, maybe a little over, more than a month, we're going to see, I can't even say the granddaddy of them all. We're going to see a couple of these granddaddies come out, and people are going to be, I'm not going to be so shocked. A few friends of mine are not going to be that shocked. I would say 50% of Americans probably will not be shocked. But there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be very shocked. some people will probably come to me and say, hey Tzvi, like, okay, I guess, whatever it is, you were more or less right. Or some people won't admit it. Some people will say, how'd you know? And we'll have that conversation again. But in the end, my friends, right now we have a situation where we have these people who are basically being undressed and unclothed, and they're telling us, well, like this gentleman, he's sitting up there in Congress and he's saying, well, you didn't buy this. He literally said that. He said, you didn't buy this at Leeds. Ladies and gentlemen, our neighbors here, at some point we're going to have to call the cops. This can't go on. Anyway. At some point he just starts telling people, you bought this at Leeds and you can't return it at Leeds. You have to go to Manchester. This is essentially what he's telling us. He's playing word games. Now he's just, now he's getting obfuscating language. And he's saying, well, yes, it's true. The parrot is dead, but you can't return it here. You got to go to Manchester. We're here in Leeds. You know what I'm saying? So, my friends, we're living in the era of the dead parrots, where you come to people, you show them, hello, this parrot's clearly dead. And it takes them about 6 months or about a year to realize, yeah, maybe it's dead. This is an ex-parrot. He is no more. He's pushing up daisies. Alright guys, I'll talk to you soon. And remember, there are no fjords to pine for. Alright, have a good one.